Episode 1 of Greg Gabriel Talks Football was pre-recorded and is suitable for all audiences.
Hey guys, it's Peggy Kaczynski. I retired early from my 20-something career as a sportscaster covering the Bulls, the Bears, the Blackhawks, the Cubs, the White Sox, and really every other college and high school team in Chicago. So what do you do after that? Well, you start a podcast. That's what I did with my teenage son, Jason. And the result is The Sportscaster and Her Son. Yes, I'm the baby boomer, a mom. We don't get along. We don't have a lot in common, but we both share a love for sports. And we always have great sports conversation. Even better, our guests in the interviews. So come check us out. We're on Podbean and the Barroom Network, or really wherever you get your audio. The Sportscaster and Her Son podcast. See you there.
Hey everyone, this is Chuck Arfine, the South Burbs Hitmen. This show rocks, and you need to listen to it every single time the podcast drops.
Look, I don't mean any disrespect. He just didn't play that well. Not for a guy of his caliber.
If they don't run the ball here, I'm going to vomit. I swear to God.
I don't really have any recollection of that at all, but I guess perhaps I blacked it all out.
You know, they won, but I'm going to be miserable all week because they stunk. Welcome, everyone, to Greg Gabriel Talks Football. My name is Aldo Gandia, and the gentleman screen left is, of course, the great Greg Gabriel. Greg, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. You're a lot thinner than the last time we were on together. What's happened to you?
I'm dying. No.
Oh, stop.
If I am, I don't know about it yet. No, I just, I had 2 surgeries in 2 years. Mm-hmm. And then I worked to get in shape for the second one because it was, my knee. And all of a sudden I started losing weight, but I haven't consciously tried to lose weight, but I've dumped close to 40 pounds.
Wow, that is amazing. What a great diet plan. You don't do anything differently, but you work out regularly, right? What, you go 2-3 days a week to the gym?
Well, I try to go 5-6 days a week.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
I mean, I've just been doing that forever, but now I got bad after I tore my Achilles. Mm-hmm. I got bad because I was limited. Mm-hmm. And so I got a little chunky in that period. Mm-hmm. But before I had the knee done, then I got back into it. And since I had the knee done, now there's, a couple months where I didn't do much except for working on my knee. But after that, I've been I just went today for about an hour and 20 minutes.
Well, I tell you, you look great, and it's great being back with you on the Barroom Network and talking football. We came up with this approach on this multi-part series where you're going to help us take a look at what is happening right now in draft rooms, in general manager offices, at football organizations throughout the country. 32 franchises are preparing for the big event, the NFL draft, which is about 10 days from when we are taping this episode. And so we want to learn from you what has happened the last 3 months leading to this moment, what is happening this week, and what's going to happen the day of the draft. So let's start with what has happened to date right now. Over the last few months, obviously outside of scouting players, what has happened and what is different now because of the pandemic, which has obviously had an impact on all the franchises?
Well, I mean, that's we could use the whole show just to answer that one question. What's different? Everything.
Wow.
Okay, number one, let's go back. Now, nobody's played football since, except for the few that played in the Senior Bowl since December,
right?
November, so, and everybody had a limited season, some conferences more than others. And we're talking Division I level. The FCS guys are playing right now. So, and some of their top prospects opted out. But generally speaking, during the fall, your scouts are making school visits. They're talking to coaches. They're watching practice. They're talking to the trainer. And when they talk to people, they don't talk just to, say, one coach. There's the pro liaison. If they can talk to the position coach in private, they're talking to him, maybe the head coach. They're talking to the trainer, the strength coach, the equipment guy. You're trying to get as much information as you can get. One of the best people to talk to is a student advisor, academic advisor.
Oh, okay.
Okay, because they don't know they're part of football ops, and they tell you a lot more. And, they can tell you if the guy's a serious student or a screw up or whatever. And, I'm sure the programs don't always like that, but you get invaluable information from them.
Mm-hmm.
But you had none of that this year. Scouts weren't allowed to make school calls. And it was limited as to the games you could go to. I'll give you, for instance, the SEC, you could send a scout to a game. They limited how many scouts could be in the press box for the game. So obviously 32 teams couldn't be at a game. But like Teddy Monago, who's on my staff, he works with the Rams now. Mm-hmm. He's their assistant director of college scouting. And Teddy lives in Birmingham. So he's like 45 minutes from the Alabama campus. He could go to one game at Alabama this year. That's it.
Wow.
Okay. Because that's what the rules were for the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he could see Alabama more. He could catch them on the road. But, some teams didn't even want to send their scouts out on the road because of the pandemic. So all their evaluation was done via tape. Now, access to the tape is great, but you're still not seeing practice, and you're not getting that valuable information. Now, you can get it by making phone calls, but you got to call. It's just a lot harder, just to do one school. It's 5 times more difficult for a scout just to get all the information he needs than he does in a normal year.
Right.
So that part, limited schedule, no access to practice, limited access to getting information from support staff and coaches, that alone makes it very, very difficult. Then you have the guys who opted out. Those suckers haven't played football. It'd be, when training camp opens, it'd be 2 years since they played football.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of them played in the Senior Bowl. Otherwise, it's been 2 years.
Right.
And then you're guessing, and I might be getting ahead of myself, but why did he opt out? And are you going to penalize him for opting out? Now, if you listen to some of the coaches, I'll tell you what, Ryan Day from Ohio State, he made that statement, last week. He goes, well, Fields wasn't like those guys who opted out, so he banged those guys and coaches are like that. Where's your passion for the game? What the hell are you opting out for?
Mm-hmm.
And some of them I'm sure did it because they felt, hey, I don't want to get hurt. This could screw me up. So teams are going to weigh that differently. I can't say a guy like Chase, the wide receiver from LSU. Mm-hmm. Everybody says he's going to be the first receiver off the board. And if you go by 2019 tape, mm-hmm. that's the case. And then the other thing you'd have going for him is he was a better player than Jefferson was. And look what Jefferson did with the Vikings
right
last year.
Right.
So you say, well, if Jefferson can do that, Chase can do more. But you got to know why he opted out. He's going to say, oh, well, I wanted to protect myself and my family against COVID. But, was that the real reason in every case? You just, we don't know that. And you don't know what, they're telling the clubs.
Mm-hmm.
So now your information that you get during the season is a lot different than what you usually get. Sometimes it can be invaluable going to a practice because you can, you can see the guy move around. You can see his athleticism and movement skills better than you can just in a game. Don't forget, when you go to a game, you only watch one player at a time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you can, if you go see Alabama play or Notre Dame play and they got, 8, 9 prospects. It's impossible to watch 8 or 9 guys in one play. You go watch one.
Exactly.
Okay. So, unless you've got 4 sets of eyes and you're a weirdo. So looking at practice, you're going around to the different positions, you're watching the different guys.
Mm-hmm.
You get an idea of their overall athleticism. You can see what their work habits are like. Little things like that.
Right.
And then obviously you grade the game film, but all you're seeing is the game film. You're not seeing them up close and personal, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now let's fast forward. Usually after the season, you have a bunch of all-star games. Okay, I think they had 2 this year.
Mm-hmm.
The NFLPA game, or there was one game that was played in the Senior Bowl. That was it. And there's usually like 5 or 4. Mm-hmm. And where you got pretty good access to those kids. Now, how they play in the game, not that important. How they practice is, again, it gets you a good look at those guys during the week in practice.
Right.
And especially this year, it would have been even better. Mm-hmm. You didn't get it. So, but even more important is that it's the interview time. You had time to sit down with the guys you were interested in. You're not going to waste your time on guys that you don't have any interest in. But the guys you were interested in, you could sit down, talk with them, and you don't have that 15-minute time limit like you have at the combine. You need to spend an hour with a guy to pick his brain. You can do that.
Right.
So that was washed out. Then there's no combine. Okay. The interviews, every team can interview 60 players. That was washed out. Mm-hmm. But the most important thing we lost was the medical. Forget it. The workouts you make up, and they were made up at the pro days.
Right.
Actually gave the guys more time to prepare. In some cases, an extra month, 5 weeks to prepare, depending on when the school held their pro day. But there's no private workouts. And at some positions, private workouts mean the world. Quarterback being number one. And because what you do, generally a pro day for a quarterback is a scripted event. He practices what he's going to do. His quarterback guru writes out the whole workout. The NFL coaches have nothing to do with what that quarterback is doing in a pro day. It's geared to make him look good. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so they're going to do the things he can do. They're not going to show the things he can't do.
Right.
Okay. So if a guy screws up his quarterback screws up his pro day, there's something wrong.
That's
okay.
Right.
Because like I say, it's been rehearsed over and over again.
Yeah.
What you do in a private workout, you're not spending an hour with the guy. You're spending 8 hours, 7 hours. Mm-hmm. You're going through interviews, classroom work. When you're in the classroom, you're doing like some installation. And the reason being, you want to see how he learns and retains. And what I mean by that is this. So let's say, you got your offensive coordinator there, the quarterback coach is or even the head coach is taking part of it in the private workout. Mm-hmm. You're going to get him in the classroom. You're going to put 6, 7 plays up on the board. And, I've been to a bunch of these, so I know how they're done. Mm-hmm. And the guy's supposed to be taking notes. Then you look at his notes to see how he takes notes.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're going to take the notes away from him and say, draw up everything on the board that I just showed you.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're quickly finding out how quickly he can assimilate what was taught to him.
Right. You actually tweeted about that just recently. You said draft analysts have a disadvantage when it comes to evaluating quarterbacks compared to clubs. The tape is only part of the evaluation. Getting him on the board to find out how a guy learns, retains, processes, takes coaching, leadership, and more are all very important. And that's exactly what you're talking about, right?
Right. Yeah. And you're going to, but, and then part of it is you get done with the classroom stuff. Now you're going out on the field and do a workout. And the whole purpose of that workout is not only to see him do things physically, right, but did he pick up what we just taught him in the classroom and can take it to the field right away?
Right.
Okay. Right. So it's all part of the learning process. It's very, very important. You had none of that this year. Now, 2 exceptions. Justin Fields had a second pro day last week. Trey Lance is having one probably while we're recording this right now. And those second pro days are being run by the pro coaches, not being run by his quarterback guru. And well, they're not getting the classroom work in, or I don't know that for sure, but I'm going to assume because there's a bunch of teams there and you can't have them learn one team and not the other. That wouldn't be fair. But still, the teams are going to have them do what they want them to do as far as the workout goes. Mm-hmm. So that's as close to a private workout as you're going to get, even though it's still not really a private workout. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, and aside from that, it's entirely different. So now let's get to the medical, and that part's huge. Number one, the combine exists not for the workout, but for the medical.
Right.
It's a relatively easy, inexpensive way to bring 335 players into one place and get a very comprehensive medical exam done. Mm-hmm. It's not just an orthopedic exam. It's internal medicine. They're checking everything. And, if the guy had a broken finger in 10th grade, they're doing an MRI on his finger. I remember one of the last years I was with the Bears, there was over 600 MRIs done on 335 players.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, that's a lot of magnetic resonance or whatever that is.
Magnetic resonance imaging or something.
There you go.
Yeah, because they want to see and be definitive on what they see. Mm-hmm. So and they have, not only do they have access to MRIs at different hospitals and remote locations around Indy, I think they truck in 4 or 5 mobile MRI machines on the back of trailers. Mm-hmm. So they're there. Take advantage of it.
Right.
And they do. So you're not getting that. So how the teams get the information? Well, what the combine did is they sent all these kids to local doctors and to do the internal examination and to do the orthopedic exam. Mm-hmm. Now, then last week they brought in over the weekend 125 guys. And those were guys that, might have had a surgery or something like that. But there was questions about his orthopedic. It had no internal medicine. Mm-hmm. But questions about the orthopedic. And so they wanted to get a hands-on approach. But the teams could only send one doctor and one trainer. So you still didn't have your full boatload of people.
Right.
It was a little quicker, but at least you got good information as far as that goes. Mm-hmm. As far as the other information, doctors I've talked to, and some of the Bears doctors are my doctors. So they're like, can you trust the information? It's like you trust what you know.
Right.
I trust what I know.
Mm-hmm.
They're human beings. They trust. They want to. They want a touchy feely. They don't.
Right.
Because doctors can interpret things differently.
Mm-hmm.
There's at the combine. There's like 6 orthopedic stations. And the team, there's like 5 or 6 teams in each of those stations.
Mm-hmm.
The player goes from one to the other. And the teams that are in one station are the same teams year after year after year. You get to know those doctors. And generally speaking, those teams share information with each other. And number one, they're not, like I know one of the teams with the Bears is Pittsburgh. A Pittsburgh orthopedic might examine one guy, the Bears orthopedic might examine another guy, and one of the other teams may examine, a third guy because they got so many players going through, but they trust everything because they've worked with these people.
Absolutely.
Okay. So with other stuff, and especially internal medicine, there's always stuff they find out through the blood work, some other things that, a player might have a problem through the EKGs that, can be a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had people say to me, there's going to be somebody drafted, or there's going to be some buddies, there's going to be more than one, that it's going to be a mistake, and that's not the fault of the teams.
Right. Right. It's because of medicals that weren't 100% trustworthy. I mean, the phrase "get a second opinion" is what comes to mind as you're relaying that information. So, fascinating process, and of course, the differences between this year and normal years is enormous. But let's now talk about the actual preparation that teams are doing that isn't that different, and that is, for instance, preparing the board. I read that some teams have a horizontal board and a vertical board, meaning the vertical is your top 150, top 200 players. The horizontal is players placed by projected round or targeted round.
Well, I mean, everybody's going to do it a little differently. Basically, you got 2 boards.
Okay.
You got a value board, which is best to worst.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you got a position board,
okay,
which is best to worst. Okay. Now, everybody's value board and how they set it up is going to be different. When I was with the Giants, we set it up, started off when I started with the Giants, it was a 12-round draft. And there was 28 teams. Mm-hmm. So we had 12 columns of 28. Okay. And there was no compensatory picks.
Mm-hmm.
So then there were more teams and you added compensatory teams. So, you might have one column of 32, another column of 32, and then in the third round, there's compensatory picks. So there was 35 or something like that. So you added those. Still, you had a shitload of players up there.
Yeah.
Right. Now, at the end of the day, okay, there's 255 round figure, depending on the compensatory picks, that are going to get drafted, 254, 255, something like that. And you have that many names up on the board when you do it that way. How many of those guys are you interested in the real world? Less than half. And I know we did this when I was in Chicago, and I'm not going to say we were front runners because Bobby Beathard was really the front runner. And Bobby Beathard, years before anybody else, his draft board was about 20, 25 players. And that's it. And that's when he was with the Redskins. And it's just guys he wanted at different areas of the draft. What we did, and a lot of teams do, we called it a hot list. Somebody else may call it their draft list or whatever, is we picked out the players we liked, and we had them, we had a value on them. These are guys you take in the first round. These are guys you take in round 2. You had, separation there. And these are guys you take in round 3 and 4. And then these are guys you'd have in 5, 6, 7. Okay, we labeled them A, B, C level players. And from a theoretical point of view, you're obviously hoping in the first 2 rounds you get two A players, and you hope you get two high A players in the first two rounds. But then you're also hoping when you get to the third round, you're getting another A player. So somebody you had rated in the first two rounds that you'll get in the third. And then when you get in the fourth, you're praying that you got an A, but it's probably going to be a real high B. And the same with a fifth. You might not even get an actual C until the seventh round or late, or if you're picking late in the sixth.
Mm-hmm.
And why is that? Because everybody's board's different. Right. And I tweeted that out earlier today. The difference, the first 20 might be similar. The order of how they are is going to be different from team to team, but the names might be relatively the same. After that, everybody's all over the board. Some of it has to do with, excuse me, what your schemes are. What kind of player you're looking for. I'll give you an example, and I can't think of the one player's name because it's a while ago. There's a big nose tackle from Alabama. I think he went in the second round.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when Lovey was our head coach. He was a good player. Obviously, he went in the second round. But he's about 6'3", 350 pounds. There was no way in a million. He could have been there in the seventh round, and we weren't taking him because he couldn't play in our defensive scheme. He was a two-gap nose tackle, and we wanted one-gap upfield players on the inside. That's why we had Tommy Harris and those guys. They suited the scheme. So fit is very, very important. That's why boards change. Now you're seeing one of the biggest changes I've seen the last few years is at linebacker. And, I'm going to say it started about maybe 6 years ago or something. Atlanta took a couple guys and real fast but small guys. Mm-hmm. And 10 years ago, those guys would have been afterthoughts because of their size or lack thereof. And now, because of their speed and their overall athleticism in space, that's what everybody wants. Roquan Smith is a perfect example. Roquan Smith was 225, 228 pounds when he was at the University of Georgia, but he runs a 4.5. Okay, and the guy at Notre Dame, JOK, this year, he's about 218. I think he was 222 on pro day, but he played the season at 215, 217, around in there. That guy can run like a deer. Mm-hmm. And those are what everybody's looking for now. Because, number one, they become every down players. You can use them in coverage. Mm-hmm. And with so many sub defenses going on, if you can get a real athletic, speedy linebacker who can cover, then you don't necessarily have to play with 6 DBs, and you're a little better against the run.
Right.
So just things like that. You got trends in the game. And, the real big, the Dick Butkuses of the day, okay, well, he might have been a first-round pick then. He might not get drafted now.
Yeah.
Okay, and he's a Hall of Famer because the game's played differently.
Mm-hmm. How true is that? It's pretty unbelievable to think that Dick Butkus, my favorite player of all time, would not be a first-round draft pick, even with what we know about him now. But all right, so one of the things that I'm really interested about, Phil Savage, someone you know very well. I got to meet him in the final year when he was the executive director over at the Senior Bowl. He said this a few years ago that this period now, after the season ends, leading up to the draft, is what he called the let's see if I got it here.
I call it the lying season.
You call it the lying season. He called it the fog of confusion.
Same thing.
Yeah, same thing. Right. So tell us what the lying season is, the fog of confusion. Tell us all about that, because we fans, we fall sucker for a lot of stuff nowadays.
Don't believe anything you hear is rule number one. And don't believe, and forget the media. Don't believe anything you hear from a scout. even if he's your best friend. And I thought, and I was talking. Oh, I'll say who it was. I mean, because I'm not. Ballard and I are really close.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought for sure that the year the Bears took Roquan, that might be his pick. And I said, I got you down for taking Roquan. He goes, you know me, Greg. And so, and they took Nelson.
Yeah.
And even a guy, I gave him his first freaking job in the NFL. He lied to me. So you can't trust anybody.
Oh, boy. And what a tough choice that was, right? I mean, Quentin Nelson.
Roquan was in the mix. And
sure,
let's say if Nelson was gone, he'd take Roquan. Right. But then they came back and they got the other guy in the second round who's he's a Pro Bowl.
Darius Leonard.
Yeah. So, but that's how you set your board. So you go into a draft and you say, I want this guy in the first round. Then you got a group of 3 or 4 guys who say, I'm hoping I get one of these guys in the second round. Now, from a theoretical point of view, there could be somebody that you really like that was still in that first level then if he's still there, then obviously he comes into play with the next pick.
Mm-hmm. And that leads to my next question. There are typically differences that happen between scouts, between the GM and a coach and so forth. Savage and Phil Savage in this article that I wrote, he said that sometimes when there is really strong disagreement about a player, that they were known to take the player off the board. But what I read that you wrote is that you guys would go back and look at more tape and get to an agreement one way or another on the player. Talk to me about that.
Well, I've always said this. You could put a tape on, 3 different games, one player, put 5 scouts in a room.
Mm-hmm. You're
going to get 5 different opinions. You're watching the same thing at the same time, but you're going to get it's how you interpret what you see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's not to say I'm right, you're wrong. It's just the way, people look for different things at each particular position. So, but you start hashing this stuff out. A lot of teams meet at the end of the fall season. And that's like your first cut down, for lack of a better word. You're not going to take it 1,200 names into February and then into April.
Mm-hmm.
We cut it in half in December, and then we cut it more in February.
Oh wow! Okay.
You meet in February, and your meetings in February are 10 days to 2 weeks, but you're going over the players that you think you might like. There's guys you're going to eliminate in December because of character, because of fit. Things like that. And then the term we use is we put them asleep. We slapped a grade on them and we were done with them. No more work. Coach wouldn't look at them. Scott wouldn't look at them. The only way that would change is if something happened in the postseason or an all-star game that he jumped out and he was just so much better than what you thought. And then you saw something that, he might be able to play in our scheme.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But did that happen a lot? No. You might get 1 or 2 players a year out of the hundreds that you're putting asleep.
Right.
So then, it's after, for the most part, it's after you get out of those February meetings, which are pre-combine, that the coaches then get involved. So, right, up through the fall, you're getting reports. You got your area scout, you got your cross-check scout, you got your directors, maybe your GM wrote a report. You might have 4 or 5 reports on a guy. Okay, and they're going to vary. And the guy's usually not as good as the best report, not as bad as the worst report, but he's somewhere in the middle. Now, and where you got that what I meant with that one statement that you talked about was that, let's say I had a guy high or I had a guy low, it doesn't really matter. And the area scout who sees the guy a lot more than I do, I'm generally, I might see him in practice, watch 4 or 5 tapes. Well, the area guy's seen him for a few years, made a couple school calls, seen practice a few times, so he's got a lot more exposure to the guy than I do. So if we're way far apart, and I only mean this if we're way, I mean like on totally different spectrums, then I go, you know what, we got to look at more tape. And the reason I did that is I wanted the scout to look at the tape from my point of view. This is what I said the positive were. This is what I said the negatives were. And then I would do the same thing. I'd look at it from his point of view. And then you get done watching the tape and you're going to, come to a conclusion. Sometimes, I might say, hey, I'm not changing my mind. And after he's done more tape, he may agree with me. But there's other times when I say, you know what? I see what you were talking about. Let's move him up a little bit. And, we had a sign, and I think I tweeted this out last week. There's a sign in the draft room. It's not about who's right. It's about being right.
Mm-hmm.
Leave your ego at the front door.
Mm-hmm.
And just make sure you get it right.
Yeah. That's a great approach, and an approach that I worked in corporations, and one that's taken there. Leave your ego outside, and sometimes that's harder to do for some people to leave their ego on the outside, but that's their way to get to a more accurate conclusion. I wanted to ask you, when you're evaluating tape, let's say the season is over. Let's say Greg Gabriel is the team that he's scouting for needs a quarterback. And so I'm going to start looking at some of the top college prospects. I'm going to start looking at tape. Can you take me through that process? Who is in the room with you? Are you doing it by yourself, or do you do it by yourself and then somebody joins you later? Take me through that process. What are you looking for? And again, let's kind of target this hypothetical, so to speak, on the quarterback position, because obviously that's a position of need for the current Chicago Bears.
Okay, well, I can tell you what we did when I was there. How they do it now, could be a little different.
Sure.
Number one, I do it. I mean, the other scouts and the coaches get involved, following the season, they're all going to have an opinion. I got a checklist that I want to see on quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it with quarterbacks, it's not always what you see on the field. You got to know how he learns and retains. You got to know his leadership ability. You got to know how he gets along with teammates. You got to know his background. Is he a partier, or is he a guy that takes football seriously? You want football to be, like number 1 or number 2 in his life. And if it's number 2, family better be number 1. Mm-hmm. And so those types of things. And, the intangibles. The intangibles with the quarterback are very, very important. Mm-hmm. And you don't see that necessarily on tape.
Right.
Now you got to look at the, what's he being asked to do in the offense they're playing? Does that help him, or does it limit him? Or is the offense limited because there's certain things he can't do? Okay. Example, Kyle Trask. Trask plays in a half-field read offense. All the tape I've looked at, maybe one play where he's looked to both sides of the field. Mm-hmm. Generally speaking, the play's going to the left, that's all he looks to. Play's going to the right, that's all he looks to. And there might be, 2 receivers to that side of the field. So he's got a 2 progression read, but it's not like he's here, then back here.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's called a half field offense. And so when I see that, and those offenses could be very, very productive in the college game.
Mm-hmm.
But the first question that pops into my mind is, why are they playing it? Is that all he's capable of playing? Or is it that's the system they want to run? So you got to get the answer to that question.
Right.
Okay. Then, then you got to look at his traits and stuff, and you say, well, you thought Tom Brady was slow? This guy might have been slower he was 5'1", 5'2", something like that. I mean, he was real slow. The slowest quarterback this year.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not quick-footed. He's not quick-footed. And then you got a guy that's like 230 pounds. He's 6'4.5", 6'5", something like that. He's got big hands, and he throws softballs. He doesn't. You never see him drive the ball. He doesn't have a very good arm. And when you would think a guy with that size and big hands like that would fire fastballs all the time. He doesn't. He's a slow pitch softball pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you're looking at that, on tape, and you're, developing your opinion. Now, I love to look at the end zone, and in each game tape, like you've seen the all 22.
Sure.
You get the wide sideline view, and then you get the end zone view.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm doing quarterbacks, I want to watch the end zone view, because the end zone shows you where his head's going. You can't necessarily see it from the sideline.
Right.
But on the end zone view, you see if he's looking left, looking right, going back to the left, going to the middle. You can see him going through the progressions. Mm-hmm. And, some offenses don't have a progression.
Mm-hmm.
And then I could go on, but I don't want to get confusing. But okay, what are they asked to do pre-snap? Do they got to identify the mic? Can they change? Are they asked to change protections, or does somebody on the offensive line change protections?
Mm-hmm.
You'd rather have the quarterback change the protections and identify and be able to, even if they don't have quote audibles in their system, be able to at least check into something else when they see that the play that's called just ain't going to work against that defense.
Mm-hmm.
And so all that comes into play too. And part of that is, quote, your processing, your ability to process.
Right.
And the guy who I think is rare, well, there's two, Rodgers and Drew Brees. Rodgers knows what you're doing before you know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that guy comes up and he reads, he has everything figured out before he even gets to the snap count.
He is incredible.
Yeah, and that ideally that's what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think Mitch struggled. And there's some guys that, all they can do is the play that's called, and so you got to put that all together. It's not just, you hear all this stuff. He threw the ball. My guy, he completed 62 or 65 throws in his pro day. Great. But can he play football?
Yeah, exactly. Greg, and I'm a fan of this. I love learning from you. I love learning about the process. I since I was a kid, I've been reading books about coaching and scouting. I've got a copy of Bill Walsh's famous book, which, by the way, I saw that on eBay. I can get $800 for it. But nonetheless, my question is, when Mitch Trubisky was on the John Gruden quarterback coach school prior to his selection in the draft, and Gruden said, show me your hard count. And Mitch got up and he didn't know what a hard count is.
Blue 85, blue 85, set. Blue 85, blue 85, set. And we run the play.
Now, if we go on a hard count, remember this, we go on a hard count, we're going to try to get him to jump off sides.
Right.
So it's blue 85. Blue 85. Sit on! Hut! We're just
do that
giving
twice?
Yeah, give him 2 huts, all right?
Gotcha.
Are those the little red flags that you're kind of looking for and asking yourself, well, if he doesn't know what a hard count is, has his head really been in the game, or was he poorly coached? Or is that a red flag, or am I looking too much into
No, it's what I said earlier. Know what he's been taught. Okay, so you got to know the scheme he's in and what he's being asked to do within that scheme. And if that isn't part of it, he doesn't know it. Now, there was a quarterback who went in the first round a few years ago, before Mitch. And I was told, and I liked the guy just looking at tape. And that's the difference between just looking at tape, making a school call, and going through interviews. Because from the physical traits, he looked pretty good. You know, he had the arm strength, he was mobile, all that other stuff. When it came to football, he didn't have a frickin' clue.
Wow.
You know, and that came out in the interview process. He didn't know what anything was. And that's why he busted. He's not even playing now.
Interesting. Let's talk a little bit about that interview process. So I'm a player. I come in to see you at the combine, or it's a Zoom meeting or whatever. I think that at the combine, you get 15 minutes with every.
You get 15 minutes, but generally speaking, you're talking to these kids at other places too.
Right. Okay.
Okay. And at the combine, there's the night the player gets there, he has no interviews, but he goes across the street to the train station, and there's coaches over there. And there's generally maybe 4 teams at a table, and you just revolve around the tables, and you can spend time with the guy. And so that's big. And really, it's not even the scouts there. It's mostly for the coaches. So they're getting some time, you know, with the players. I would go and I'd watch and I'd listen, but I never ask questions. You know, I let the coaches do all the work.
Sure.
Excuse me. Because they've got to form their opinion. You might not agree with their opinion, but you got to let them form their opinion. And so you get that. Then you talk to them again at the pro day, or you may bring them in for one of your 30 visits. Well, guess what? No 30 visits this year. You didn't have them last year either. And those are important. They're important 2 reasons. We split them up. You're allowed 30. We'd bring in 12 to 15 guys that we were interested in drafting. Some we weren't interested in drafting, but we wanted everybody else to think we were interested in drafting.
Right.
And I'll tell you a story about that
Great.
in a minute. Then the other guys, some teams might bring all 30, you know, they might be picking 25th in the first round, and they're going to bring in 12 potential first round guys. Okay. We tried to stay away. We went half and half. Like one year we brought in Tommy Harris. Another year we didn't bring anybody we took in the first or second round, because we didn't want teams to know, you know, that we had an interest in that, because everybody keeps track of who's going where. You got charts going. Okay, Joe Schmo's been to Baltimore, Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Pittsburgh. Okay, well, those might be the teams that are interested. Those are the ones he only visited 4 places, and those are the 4. So, you know, you want to know that. It's just every little. So this year, last year also, you didn't have that info. So it's just a little bit of intel. Now you probably can find out who did Zoom calls. Sometimes agents put that out, and they shouldn't, because you want to try to keep it quiet.
Right.
And you can have more than one Zoom call with a guy. So the purpose of the Zoom calls is to make up for the private interviews you have, some of the classroom work with quarterbacks. I think these coaches have done a pretty good job of perfecting what you can do and what you can't do on the Zoom calls, as far as like getting a guy on the board. Like, I think you can do it. Not easy, but you can do it. And so, you know, they're excuse me, trying to make the best of a bad situation. So is that, I might have gotten off track there.
No, that's a great response to my question. And what I'm dying to hear now is the story you were going to share about guy that you kind of put out there that you were interested in, but maybe weren't really interested in. What's that all about?
Well, what year did we take Grossman? 2004, 2003? 2003.
Yeah. Okay, 2003, correct.
Right. And we knew we were going to take a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we pretty much made up our mind. I think at that point, in the early draft process, we had one first-round pick, but then we made a trade with the Jets and ended up with 2 first-round picks. And we didn't want to take Rex early because we knew some other guys would go before him. Right. But we knew Carson Palmer was going to go number 1, so we did nothing with Carson Palmer. We did go down and work out Byron Leftwich down at IMG Academy, what's now IMG Academy down in Bradenton, Florida. And generally speaking, you have to work out a guy at a school or his hometown, but he legally changed his address to Bradenton so we could do it in Bradenton.
Interesting.
So if his address was wherever he was from, and I don't remember, we would have had to gone there. So we sent a bunch of people to Kyle Bowler's workout, sent a bunch of people to Chris Sims' workout, and we brought both Sims and Kyle Bowler in, drooled over him. I think we even let him meet with the press. I know we let Bowler meet with the press. We took Bowler off our board at the combine. Okay. He was awful.
Thank you.
In the interview. Awful. And I'll tell you what happened. I mean, it's 18 years ago or something, so who gives a shit? You only get 15 minutes, but we're talking, and so we're talking about his days at California, and before his last year at Cal, Jeff Tedford, became the head coach, and he went from a sub 50% pass completion rating to like 59% in his first year under Tedford, and he had a rocket arm. Now, in that same offense, right after him, a guy named Aaron Rodgers played and had over 70% in the exact same offense. But part of it with Bowler is that, before Tedford came, and Tedford was very good with, giving the information. Some coaches don't want to give you anything, but Tedford was good. But as we asked Bowler in the combine, you were losing your first couple of years, you're the starting quarterback, how'd you deal with it? And he goes, well, I'd walk around campus with my hoodie up so nobody knew who I was. Wrong answer. That answer alone is the reason we took him off the board.
Really?
Because it was like, your quarterback's supposed to be outgoing, demonstrative, the boss, the leader, everything else. Now I'll get back to Rex. Now people can say what they want about Rex. Rex had a pretty good career before he shattered his ankle. And when I say shattered his ankle, he had like 10 breaks.
Oh, my goodness.
Remember the horse Barbaro, the racehorse Barbaro?
Sure,
and on the back stretch of one of the races, Triple Crown races, he broke his ankle. And they showed the ankle. They were able to save him. They didn't have to put him down, but they showed the ankle, and he had like 13 screws in his ankle.
Right.
That's what Rex's ankle looked like.
My goodness.
And I'm not lying. Okay, now, Rex was not fast, but he was very quick-footed. And his game was lateral movement. And he was short. He was just 6'1". And so before he hurt his ankle, he had that ability to slide laterally and find the open space, and he had a very, very quick delivery on a cannon for an arm. So that injury took away what he did best. And I think it messed with his mindset too, because he knew, and it went downhill from there. But before that, people can say what they want. I know what he was. But don't forget, we got him at 21 or 22, and I got to continue the story about Bowler. He was the fourth quarterback taken in that draft. Carson Palmer went first, Leftwich went second, Bowler went third, Rex went fourth. Okay, so he had the second best career of those four.
Yeah.
Okay, and I don't remember if Palmer made it to a Super Bowl. He didn't with Cincinnati. Might have when he was at Arizona.
Yeah, I'll double check that.
But Rex is the only guy who got to Super Bowl. So, but anyway, getting to the draft, like I said, I went up to the University of Florida. There was an all-star game in January. It was Florida against the world all-star game. It was played in Orlando. That week I went up to Gainesville. It's only, hour and 20-minute drive from Orlando. And I spent a lot of time with Rex. And I spent a whole day there. And I spent a lot of time with the offensive coordinator mostly. I talked to the head coach, but mostly the offensive coordinator. And really wanted to find out a lot about him. Except for Phil Emery going to his pro day. And Phil was the area scout then for the Southeast, so he had to go to the pro day. We did nothing with Rex Grossman. We didn't bring him in. We had no coaches call him.
Wow.
We didn't want people to know, but we drooled over Sims and Bowler and publicly drooled.
Right.
To the point that in that draft, Phil Savage trades up in front of us to take Kyle Bowler.
Well done. Well done.
And of course, I call Savage and say, "You didn't have to do that, bro."
Well done. That is fabulous. Great story. I wanted to also ask you tweeted this out. The Chicago Bears put out the 35th overall pick of the 2003 NFL draft was Peanut Tillman. And you tweeted out, we had a first round grade on Peanut Tillman, and we were very nervous thinking he might not make it to us at 35. Thank God he did. Great player, great career, great pick. And I totally agree. I mean, this gentleman, Charles Peanut Tillman, should be inducted into the Hall of Fame in his future. I certainly hope so. Best cornerback I've ever seen play with the Chicago Bears. Tell us about having that first round grade and those moments getting into round two.
Well, it's what I said a little while ago. Although you're hoping when you got a high second round pick that you're getting somebody from your first round.
Yeah.
It's because no two draft boards are the same.
Right.
And so we identified him going into the draft that's the guy we wanted to take, with that second round pick. And he was the number one. You always, you put like 3 or 4 names, you prioritize them. This guy, this guy, this guy, but he was the guy. So you're kind of sweating up, and we didn't want to move up. I don't remember if we had the ammo or not, but we, at 35, we thought that we probably had him higher than a lot of people because of the level of comp and stuff. And he got pissed off at me a couple of years ago, and that's having like a Twitter thing with him, and said, well, you should remember your footwork at camp your rookie year, because it was awful. And that it was just learning how to do exactly. And he goes, what do you mean it was offense? So, but it was. I remember, we're sitting in our offices watching tape of the daily practices, and Bobby DePaul and I, and Bobby DePaul was the director of pro scouting at the time, and that's one thing we kept commenting on the first few days of practice was that Well, his ball skills were great. His footwork was not perfected. He's a little tall in his back pedal and things like that. It's just stuff you got to learn.
Sure.
Going from college. So, and he got real good at it. But he was one of the first big corners, to come into the league. A lot of guys, the ideal guy was 5'11", 6 foot. Tillman's 6'2", and his arms are so long he could tie his shoes standing up. So he, between that length and his height, and on top of that, he was a, mid 4'4" guy. He was just a hell of an athlete. He just had to learn how to play. Right. And it didn't take him long.
Well, I'll tell you what, one guy who probably wasn't very happy that you selected Tillman is Randy Moss, because in my opinion, Tillman probably prevented 6 more touchdowns to Moss's Hall of Fame career, because he would just played him as tough as any cornerback I ever saw play Randy Moss, who was one of the all-time greatest wide receivers. You guys must have been really, really psyched when he would play. Did you just say, okay, he's just going to guard the number 1 receiver and don't worry about it?
That part I don't know. That's
the
coach's decision.
Okay.
But I know, I don't recall if he was starting right off the bat as a rookie. But I know he was the second half of the season. And I know, Rex came in, Rex was that same draft class.
Right. Wow.
And the end of the season, we had a whole bunch of rookies playing. We were out of the playoffs. And, we felt that, so that's the 03 season, because Lovey came in the next year. And we felt real good about what we had going forward, because we thought we had a home run with all those guys.
Yeah. That's got to be a great feeling when you get the guys on your board. That has to be like getting a hole in one or something like that.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can tell you Peter King, I wrote about it, and then Peter King wrote about it last year. No, it was 2 years ago. Because it was before I went to the XFL. The bad story, and the draft where I learned the absolute most, was that I don't remember the exact year. Might have been 96, 97. I was, still with the Giants. And now it had to be before that, because Dan Reeves was the coach. And so 91 and 92 was Ray Hanley. 93, 94, 95, I think was Dan Reeves. So it had to be 95.
Okay.
Might have been 96. Going into our draft meetings, now our meetings in New York got volatile because George Young loved arguments. He was the GM.
Right.
And he felt, and I tweeted this out last week too. When George hired me, he said, I'm not hiring you to agree with me. You better argue with me, and you better challenge. That's but right. he wanted, he goes, if everybody's going to agree with me, I don't need you.
Right.
So, but anyway, we going into that draft, the consensus top 4 in no particular order were Keyshawn Johnson, Simeon Rice, the other outside backer from Illinois, I can't think of his name, and Jonathan Ogden. Okay, and I think we had Ogden as not Ogden. I think we had Ogden first on our board, Simeon Rice second. The guy we wanted from a personnel point of view was Simeon Rice. There was a running back in that draft, Lawrence Phillips, remember, from Nebraska?
Sure.
Great running back, but a frickin' knucklehead. And worse. Maybe he's a criminal. So the key was we were picking 5th. Everybody knew those guys would probably go first 4, but we were hoping somebody would take Phillips and we'd get one of those 4. And we'd be happy. Now, at that time, Art Modell was the owner of the Baltimore Ravens. And that year was the first year Ozzie Newsome was the GM of Baltimore. Modell let it be known he wanted Lawrence Phillips. And Modell and Wellington Mara, the owner of the Giants, were very, very close. Modell told Wellington, I want Phillips. We're going to take Phillips. So we thought that we were going to get one of those 4 guys and felt, pretty confident. And I wasn't a decision maker then. I was a scout. So fast forward 2 days before the draft, in a pre-draft meeting between Ozzie and Modell, Ozzie says, we're not taking Phillips. Now, Ozzie, he had to show some balls there because the owner wanted this guy, and it's Ozzie's first draft. So Modell went along with him. And, they took Jonathan Ogden. And those 4, Keyshawn goes first, but they go off Keyshawn, Rice, the other guy from or Keyshawn, Ogden, Rice, and the other guy from Illinois go 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hardy, right?
Yeah, John Hardy. And so now we're on the clock at 5. We don't got a guy. And here's what I learned is that you got to be prepared for the worst case scenario.
Yeah, right.
And again, I wasn't a decision maker there. So, but I heard George Young was frantic. He tried to trade out. And I think it was then the Houston Oilers, and the Houston Oilers said, well, we'll give you a 7th. It moved from like 5 to 9 or something like that.
Yeah.
And George said, I can't do that. That screws up the integrity of the trade. And that's before we had the charts and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we couldn't get out of the trade, and we take a guy that Reeves liked. Now I've left out one part of the story. We argued in the pre-draft meetings for literally a day and a half between Dan Reeves and the personnel department about Simeon Rice. Dan Reeves said Simeon Rice couldn't play. And we put tape on, and no matter how good he looked, Dan was adamant Simeon Rice couldn't play. Now I'm going to fast forward because this is the best part of the story.
Okay.
Later that season, get into the season, we got to play Arizona. That's who drafted Simeon. And our offensive line coach name is Pete Mangurian. This is Monday or Tuesday of game week. They're putting together a game plan. Pete says, Dan, we got to leave a back end or keep a tight end next to the tackle to block this guy, or he's going to kill the quarterback. And Reeves just ripped Mangurian a new a-hole.
Wow.
He said, that son of a bitch couldn't play back in April, and he can't play now. You block him with the tackle. End of discussion. Fast forward to the game, 2 sacks and knocked the quarterback out in the first quarter.
Oh, no. Oh, no. One of the worst calls Reeves has ever made in his career. So you end up drafting Cedric Jones in that draft, 5th overall out of Oklahoma, and he lasted in the league 4, 5, 6 years. How?
Yeah, but he just, he wasn't very good.
Yeah, that is.
But here's the thing. You got to be, and I've tweeted this out a number of times.
Right.
You got to be prepared for the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And if you can accept that, you're in good shape. Okay, if not, you got to get out. But you don't get out when you're on the clock.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the trade's made down the clock, but you gotta anticipate that. And so, in the days leading up to the draft, and generally speaking, that'll start this week, maybe first part of next week, where you're gonna call and say, "Hey, you know what? Guy we want might not be there. If that's the case, we may want to move out of the pick."
Right.
Now you're not trying to make a deal then. All you're trying to do is let teams know. And you might, depending on how your board stacked, you may draw a line in the sand and say, okay, we're picking 5. We think we can get a pretty good player as far back as 11.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want to go any farther back than that.
Right.
And then draw the line there. So you're calling 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. And just letting them know that you may want to make a deal. When you do that, when you spend that time doing that preparation, you will get phone calls. It happens every year because I've done it. You know, I mean, the year we got Devin, we let it known that, you know, we had a late first round pick. We knew we were going to try to trade out. We did trade out. And we had, and the main part was acquiring Devin. So we had 7 teams call us for our pick. And then it was, the only thing that was difficult is going through the different scenarios. Okay, which one's the best one?
Right.
You know, that we can get guys what we want. And it turned out to be Buffalo.
Fascinating stuff. Now, I'd like to spend the last 10, 15 minutes talking about what is going on this week. As we're taping this, it's 10 days before the draft. The boards are set, right? There's no changing those boards.
No, no. You're working on the boards now.
Okay, you're still working on board.
Yeah.
Well, and clearly there's still some pro days and so forth.
Well, the only pro day left is Lance today. Now, I don't know if anybody's there. In fact, I'm going to look right now because I had a guy who was supposed to let me know this.
Okay. We are watching Greg Gabriel in action here. That phone is loaded with the most important phone numbers.
Nope. I haven't heard yet.
Okay.
One guy was going to tell me what teams are there.
Okay.
Now, I mean, I know San Francisco's there. I know Atlanta's there. I just wanted to know if the Bears were there.
And I'll just say this for our listeners and viewers, that on our next episode, we're going to learn from Greg what his evaluation is on some of these quarterbacks, what he's heard from certain people, and we'll have a lot more in our next episode. But yeah, let's get back to this final topic here of what is happening here 10 days out of the draft. What are teams doing? Okay,
well, first you set the board by position. Okay, so you're ranking the receivers, first through last, and it's not all of them. You might rank 30 of them, 35, something like that. And you're going through each position, and then now, and really, I'm wrong in that. The way we did it, again, it was the receivers that we wanted.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. That we were interested in. We'd rank those, and part of that was, you'd watch tape with the coaches leading up to these final meetings, so you got a pretty good idea of what coaches felt. You know what the scouts felt. We'd put together a preliminary board. Jerry and I would do that, and then you'd argue everything out in these meetings leading up. We would work in the board until 3 days before the draft. Okay. And I think that's pretty general, around the league. You're always, nothing's in cement because you're always trying to get more information. A guy could fall off the back of a truck and hurt himself.
Right.
And you need that information because that can change your grade. So you first stack by position, then you stack by value. Okay, I'm going to take the receiver and the running back got the same grade, but I'm going to take the receiver over the running back, assuming they're both there.
Right, because he's more. That's a more valuable need.
Well, it could be, yeah. You prioritize.
Right.
Okay. Now, teams will tell you need doesn't play. Subconsciously, it does. You kind of push those guys up a little bit higher. That's been my experience.
Right.
So, and you got grades on. So you got, there's a number grade on these guys. So, when you're stacking them, they're being stacked according to their grade.
Right.
Okay. So let's say you got you're using the common system. You got a 69, 68, 67, 66, etc. If a guy's a 66 and another guy's a 65, well, that's easy.
Mm-hmm.
You're taking the 66 over the 65. End of discussion.
Right.
But if you got 3 players at 66, you got to prioritize which one you want first.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's gone, I'll go to this guy. And if he's gone, I'll go to that guy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically what's going on now. You're prioritizing and you're setting a plan. And what I mean like that, when you go into a draft, it's very similar. During the week and the season, you got a game on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Start putting your game plan together after you get through grading the players on Monday morning. And then you start your work on next week and the upcoming game. And you start putting that game plan together. And then you have practice Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, installing the game plan.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what happens in these meetings too. You're putting together a plan for the draft. Mm-hmm. How am I going to fill needs? How am I going to get the players I want? Do I got to trade?
Mm-hmm.
You might say, the only way I'm going to get this is I'm going to trade. I got to make a trade, or whatever. And so that plan is set. When you get to draft day, there is no argument. You've already done that. Now on draft day, it's the execution of the plan.
Mm-hmm.
There's no fighting on draft day.
Right. So take me also then through what is happening on draft day, and
eat a lot.
That's right. You eat and you worry, probably.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm most interested in, because there's been great players who have gone undrafted. Wes Welker is one guy. And so what is happening day 3? Who is making these calls to these undrafted free agents? And do you have a board for undrafted free agents? These are the guys that we are targeting after.
Your hope. Well, I started that a little while ago and I didn't finish it. I said you're bringing the 30, maybe half of that was draft guys.
Mm-hmm.
The other 15 guys were guys that we thought were not going to get drafted.
Okay.
And that we wanted for free agents, and we wanted to get a medical on them. Because that's the purpose of the 30 visits too, is to get the medical.
Mm-hmm.
You can't bring a guy in and not give him a medical. That's against league rules.
Okay.
So, and we would recruit those guys. So, and we told them very, very honestly, there's one guy I lied to. But we'd say, we're not drafting you. I hope you get drafted. And for your sake, we don't have you rated as a draftable player. But we do want you to be a free agent, come with us as a free agent. And we tell them why. And you sell them on that. You have to meet with the position coach. You have to meet with the coordinator. You have to meet with the head coach. And it's like college recruiting. Everybody's recruiting the player and telling them why, we want him. Now, there was one player, and okay, I'm drawing a blank on the name now. My age is coming into play now.
Corey Graham.
Yes, Corey Graham. Now, I don't know how I compare it. Corey Graham, see, the other part of that story is my daughter was a sprinter and a damn good one. Mm-hmm. And Corey was a state champion sprinter. He ran like a 10.5 or 10.600 meters in high school. Mm-hmm. And New York State champion and the Catholic State Championships, at that time they were separate. Mm-hmm. And then in the summer, he ran in the track club. And my daughter knew him really, really well. Mm-hmm. And so I called my daughter during this time, during the meetings. So, Ryan, I need some dirt on Corey Graham. I got everything good. What's the dirt? And I know you know him well. She goes, there is no dirt. I go, come on, give me the truth. She goes, Dad, there's no dirt. And the day we drafted, and we brought him in for a medical, told him, probably weren't going to draft him, but we knew we were going to draft him at the right time. But we just didn't want to let that out.
Right.
And Lovey said, we were talking in these meetings, and Lovey said, I think I'll take your daughter's word.
I love it.
And really, that's a true story. And and Corey's a great guy. He didn't stay a Chicago Bear because Lovey wanted to move to safety. And he wanted to stay at corner.
Interesting.
So that's why he left in free agency.
Wow. That is a fascinating story. And so
and he ended up being a safety.
Yeah. Your daughter, I'm surprised she's not in the scouting business. What is she doing nowadays?
She's in the baby business. She just had her 4th a week ago today.
That is right. Congratulations. You are now a 4-time granddad?
No, 12.
12. That is amazing. How do you keep track of birthdays and presents and all that stuff?
I don't.
Good man.
All I do is I tell everybody, I go, just remember one thing. Grandkids cost more than your own kids.
That's right. Even when you total up college, they still cost more.
They do.
There is no.
Because you got grandmothers that are just dying to give them presents.
That's right. Well, I got to tell you, this has been a fascinating 70, 80 minutes of football talk, and we're going to continue to do more in this multi-part series. Like I said earlier, we're going to talk to Greg about his impressions on some of the talent coming out. We'll learn more about the draft process. I mean, we skimmed the surface of what the entire draft process and scouting process is. Send me your questions. You know how to reach me at Bears Barroom on our Twitter account, on our Facebook page, whatever. And then Greg and I will try to get to your questions on our future program. So, Greg, this has been fabulous. Thank you for making time. And
one thing I want to say, because I think, it can wait, but maybe something will happen before then.
Sure.
There's been a lot of stuff out there. I know Rappaport tweeted out probably 2 weeks ago that Anthony Miller's on trade market. And if you look, like I look at over the cap, and going into the weekend, the Bears had like round figure $1.5 million in cap space. Well, they signed Marquise Goodwin. It's not official until the name gets turned into the league. And that means, that you could reach an agreement with a guy, but until he physically signs the contract, you can't, turn it into the league. Okay. Then today they signed, re-signed Deshaun Gibson. Okay, so that's 2 players.
Right.
Guarantee you that's taking up more than $1.5 million of cap space. If that was, what's left. You could doctor that up with bonus money and stuff, but still, $1.5 million is $1.5 million. So that means they've got to either get rid of somebody or restructure some other contracts to have some room, if that $1.5 million figure was accurate. But I've thought all along, if that's been out there for weeks, that he's been available on the trade market. Bigsy had it even, Bigsy had it a good 6 weeks ago.
Right.
So, and nothing's happened. So that tells me 2 things could possibly happen. And I may be wrong on both, but just my thought process is, one, he could get released then because there's nobody wants him. But better than that, and I think it's a win-win for everybody involved, is he's used as part of a negotiation for a trade-up in one of the later rounds. Okay. And the reason I say that is, generally trade up, you got to give a pick or 2 picks or whatever. And I'm not saying first round, second round. I'm saying, in the later rounds, because I think that his value is probably as good as he is, and he's a talented guy, but there's been, issues and inconsistent production.
Right.
that he's probably at best a fourth and maybe only a sixth.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if you use him to trade up and around, the team making the trade
Mm-hmm.
actually comes out a winner because they're keeping the pick in that round.
Right.
They're just moving down and they're getting a player
Mm-hmm.
that could be a decent player.
Right.
And the Bears aren't giving up a pick, but they're getting rid of a contract that they don't want. Okay. But the cap space involved in that's only 1.2 million.
Right.
So, whether if they've said, we just can't get a deal done, maybe he's the guy that goes to cover these two guys. I don't know the answer to that.
Would he be a good candidate, Greg, for like a conditional deal? So you send him to a team and you get a conditional 2020 draft pick. Excuse me,
2021.
Yeah, 2022. Actually, you get a conditional 2022 draft pick based on his performance. So for
that could happen too.
Yeah, because that's a scenario I think that because I'm with you. The guy is talented, and he'll probably get moved somewhere, and he'll play really well. Get 60.
Well, put it this way: if he gets waived, he's either getting claimed. Well, it gets claimed. You got to claim his contract, and you might not want to claim the contract because it's 1.2 million.
Right.
And even though that's not a lot of money,
right?
You might say, yeah, but I can get him for 300,000 less.
Mm-hmm.
On the vet minimum.
Yep.
So. And then do a 1 year prove it deal.
Mm-hmm.
And light a fire under his rear end.
Right.
So, I get it, but again, and your idea is good. I just thought it was a win-win for everybody involved to use them as a trade-up.
Yeah.
But you've got to basically, even though it wouldn't be announced before the draft, like draft day trades very rarely are done before the draft. Now, the San Francisco thing happened, and like Philly did it years ago because they were targeting a certain player and they had to get to a certain point to get that player.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it was Carson Wentz, and I think the Rams did it to get Goff. So, and San Francisco did it to get one of these quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know which one, but they're going to get one of these. They're going to take one of those quarterbacks. It's a foregone conclusion.
Right.
Well, the Bears can't trade up to 8 today because they don't know if the guy's going to be there.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. So, now you can make the calls.
Right.
To prepare, and that's what they do. You could say, and is that a scenario? Well, it could be, and somebody wrote about it, but when you think about it, I mean, if you look at it, if it's true what they were willing to give up for Russell Wilson, why wouldn't they be willing to give up a boatload of capital to get one of those 5 quarterbacks?
Yeah.
And so I don't remember who wrote it. It might not have even been a local guy. Might have been a national writer.
Okay.
But there's some credence to that.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to talk about on our next episode are some of the guys that we fans should be paying attention to, and some of the guys we should not be paying attention to. And I'm talking about media members. So that's always a fun topic to get Greg's take on that. We're going to leave it there. And I think that's a really good tease for our followers and for our listeners. Greg, this has been so good. I've learned so much, and I can't wait for the next episode to learn more and get your take on players and media people and who knows what else. And then after the draft, we'll have you back so that you could talk about some of the players that have been selected, because that's going to be of utmost importance is your take on, they've got 4 picks in the 6th round. And I bring that up because you talk about trading up with Anthony Miller potentially. Well, that, if you package 2 6-rounders and Anthony Miller, what does that get you? That could get you a 4th rounder perhaps, and you don't have a 4th rounder in this draft.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, that's all hypothetical.
Yeah.
But somebody's got to like Anthony Miller to do that.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, I mean, you got to make a deal. You got to have 2 people. You know, people say, "Oh, let's trade down." Well, you can't trade down unless you got a partner.
Right.
Okay, and that's the hard part.
Yep.
Finding the partner.
Yep. All right, my friend. Again, thank you very much. Those of you, remember, get your questions into Greg, and we'll address them on our next episode, which we'll do later this week. Thank you all very much for watching. For Greg Gabriel, I'm Aldo Gandia. We'll see you next time.